There's a $50,000 backyard secret that big farms have been desperately trying to keep from small property owners like you. These five forgotten animals can generate more income than most people's day jobs using nothing but the space behind your house. And when you discover what they are, you'll understand exactly why industrial agriculture spent decades making sure you never heard about them. While they've convinced everyone that farming requires hundreds of acres and massive equipment, the truth is far different. These five animals produce premium food, require almost no space, and create multiple income streams that would make your neighbors question everything they know about making money from land. But here's what they don't want you to realize. One of these animals can produce $3,000 worth of premium protein annually in a space smaller than your living room. Another generates passive income while you sleep, requiring just 30 minutes of work per month. And the most profitable one? It multiplies so fast that a single pair can replace your entire grocery budget within 1 year. The question is, are you ready to learn the backyard secret that could generate $50,000 annually from animals they made you forget? Or will you keep believing that real farming is impossible without massive land and debt?
In the years after World War II, a new kind of farming empire was taking shape, not in the fields, but in boardrooms and state houses. The public was bombarded with glossy advertisements and government-backed newsreels promising a future built on a single animal, the factory-farmed chicken. In 1951, the Chicken of Tomorrow contest, backed by Arbor Acres and the USDA, dangled a $25,000 prize for the fastest-growing, most uniform broiler. Cameras rolled as hybrid birds strutted across trade show stages, while duck and squab producers watched their markets collapse. By 1960, supermarket shelves had all but erased duck eggs and squab, their share dropping by 70%. The message was everywhere. If you wanted to farm for profit, you needed chickens, and lots of them. Behind the scenes, the National Chicken Council and its allies were pouring millions into lobbying state legislatures. Between 2005 and 2020 alone, over $5 million was spent influencing poultry processing laws in more than 20 states. These bills tightened on-farm slaughter rules and created exemptions that favored massive confined animal operations, not backyard producers. At the 2015 NCC convention, industry leaders openly discussed niche threats to uniformity, a thinly veiled reference to the small-scale growers who refused to play by industrial rules. The goal was simple: make it harder, more expensive, and more confusing for anyone outside the system to raise and sell alternative animals. Archival ads from the 1950s painted a clear picture. Real farming meant endless rows of white chickens, acres of machinery, and a mountain of dead. Rabbits, ducks, quail, and bees were dismissed as hobbies or relics of the past. Meanwhile, local ordinances and zoning boards, often lobbied by industry groups, began restricting small livestock and backyard poultry. The narrative was set: if you didn't have hundreds of acres and a bank loan, you had no business calling yourself a farmer. But the facts tell a different story. Scientific experts like Dr. Anthony Pescatore have shown that quail, for example, can outproduce chickens in premium egg and meat yields per square foot. Yet this evidence rarely reached the public. Instead, a carefully crafted myth took hold, one that still shapes zoning laws and market access today. The result? Generations of property owners taught to overlook the very animals that could have turned their backyards into thriving, independent businesses.
On a chilly March morning in 2017, Austin code enforcement trucks rolled through quiet neighborhoods, their arrival anything but routine. By noon, more than 100 backyard coops, home to hundreds of quail, stood empty or flattened. The official charge was illegal poultry, a technicality buried in city code, but for families who had spent years building up flocks, the impact was devastating. One owner, who had raised quail for her daughter's therapy and a side income, watched as officers bulldozed the only business she could run from home. Fines reached $2,000 per household, with warnings that repeat violations could mean even steeper penalties. The city claimed it was about noise and nuisance, but neighbors argued that quail are quieter than the legal limit for leaf blowers. The reality was harsher. A single line in a 2016 ordinance had made quail, unlike chickens, off limits on most lots under 10,000 square feet. Overnight, dozens of small producers lost not just their birds, but their right to supplement their income or feed their families. For some, it felt like a message: stay small, stay invisible, or get out. The fallout stretched far beyond a few cages. Within days, the Austin Backyard Quail Association gathered 5,000 signatures demanding the city reverse course. Local chefs who relied on backyard eggs and meat testified at City Hall. Experts pointed out that a compact quail setup could produce more protein per square foot than any legal chicken coop, with less noise and lower risk of disease. Yet city officials seemed unmoved, insisting on the letter of the law. For those caught in the sweep, the penalties were more than financial. One resident described the raid as a war on self-reliance. Families who had built side businesses selling premium eggs and hatching chicks found themselves facing sudden losses, with no recourse but to fight for change. The tension in Austin became a rallying point for backyard farmers nationwide, a stark reminder that the right to raise small, profitable animals can be erased with a single vote. Months later, after relentless public pressure, the ordinance was amended. Small lots could now keep up to 6 quail, hardly enough to build a business but a crack in the wall. The scars from that spring remained. For every victory, the threat of enforcement still hangs over anyone who dares to turn a backyard into something more than a patch of grass. The message is clear. The battle over who gets to farm and how is far from settled. Dr. Anthony Pescatore stands in a cramped research barn surrounded by the steady pulse of Coturnix quail. The numbers speak for themselves. In just 120 square feet, less than the footprint of a small bedroom, 50 hens can lay 300 eggs a week. That's 15,000 eggs a year, all from a space most suburban homes consider wasted. Each egg, sold at farmers markets for up to $1 a piece, turns a forgotten corner of the yard into a steady stream of income. Pescatore, a poultry scientist at the University of Kentucky, has tracked these birds for decades. He points to the feed conversion ratio, 2.5 pounds of feed for every pound of quail produced. Chickens, the supposed gold standard, need more feed, more space, and more time to reach market weight. Yet zoning boards and industry pamphlets insist that only chickens count as real farming. The quail, with their rapid growth and quiet calls, never make the brochure. Inside the barn, it's not just about eggs. Every few weeks, surplus males are harvested for meat, fetching $8 to $12 per pound at local restaurants. The math is simple. A backyard setup can net $3,000 or more a year, with startup costs barely topping $500. For families squeezed by rising grocery bills, that's not a hobby, it's a lifeline. But these facts rarely surface in public debates. Pescatore's research, published in university bulletins and extension guides, is clear. Quail outperform chickens in premium yield per square foot. Yet the myth persists, reinforced by decades of marketing and regulation. The real threat to big farms isn't noise or nuisance, it's the possibility that thousands of small lots could quietly outproduce the industrial giants, one egg at a time. Leah Lynch never planned to become a full-time farmer. In 2019, she started with just $500 and a few wire cages, tucking her first rabbits behind a North Carolina garage. Within a year, her backyard was feeding more families than some small grocery stores and bringing in more cash than her old office job. Rabbits, she discovered, are nature's quiet multipliers. A single doe can kindle up to 8 litters a year, each one producing 6 to 10 kits. With careful breeding, Leah's colony grew from a handful of animals to 40 healthy breeders, all in a space smaller than most suburban lawns. The numbers add up fast. Meat rabbits reach market weight in as little as 10 weeks, with fryers selling for $10 per pound at local butchers and farmers markets. Hides, once tossed aside, now fetch $5 a piece for crafts and fly tying. Even the manure, cold, odorless, and packed with nutrients, commands a monthly subscription from local gardeners desperate for organic fertilizer. By the end of her second year, Leah's net income had topped $35,000. Today, she clears as much as $45,000 annually, all from less than half an acre. Rabbits turned my backyard into a $35,000 business. Big Ag wants you thinking it's impossible, Leah says, her hands stained with hay and ink from the morning's market tally. The secret lies in relentless reproduction and diversified sales. While industrial farms push a single product, Leah's operation runs on multiple streams: meat, breeding stock, pelts, and garden gold. When predators struck in 2020, wiping out half her herd, she rebuilt with electric fencing and a direct-to-chef delivery route, fetching premium prices from restaurants hungry for local, sustainable protein. For families squeezed by rising food costs, her story is proof that the backyard rabbit is more than a hobby, it's a revenue engine hiding in plain sight. Mike Torres clocks in at the city water plant before sunrise, but his real paycheck hums quietly in the backyard. 2 stacked beehives tucked behind a patch of wildflowers work day and night while he's on the job. Each hive produces up to 80 pounds of honey a year, golden jars that fetch $12 a pound at the weekend market. That's nearly $1,000 per hive, before counting the wax, pollen, and propolis sold to local soap makers and herbalists. Mike's favorite part, he calls it money that drips in while you're asleep. But honey is only half the story. In spring, Mike hauls his hives to nearby orchards where farmers pay up to $1,500 per season for pollination services. One afternoon's drive, and the bees are earning more than a week's wages at the plant. It's a side hustle that doesn't require punching a clock or answering to a supervisor. The bees work the blossoms, the farmers pay for the boost in fruit yields, and Mike brings home another check, no overtime required. Some years, a single backyard hive can bring in upwards of $900 in honey and wax alone, with pollination contracts pushing total income past $1,500. Multiply that by a handful of hives, and suddenly a patch of grass is out-earning most garden plots, all with less than an hour of work a week. As Mike puts it, passive income isn't a myth, it just has wings. For every neighbor who thinks farming means tractors and debt, Mike's bees quietly rewrite the rules, turning overlooked corners into steady, low-labor profit. And while industrial farms chase scale, backyard beekeepers like Mike prove that sometimes the smallest workers deliver the sweetest returns. Sarah Patel steps into her backyard at sunrise, rubber boots splashing through dew as a flock of khaki Campbell ducks fan out across the grass. For Sarah, every morning is an experiment in profit and ecology. Each bird lays over 220 eggs a year, thick-shelled, rich, and bright orange, fetching up to $12 a dozen at the Saturday market. By fall, her flock has produced 120 dozen eggs and nearly 200 pounds of meat, all from a patch of lawn smaller than most driveways. But the real surprise comes from what the ducks don't leave behind: pests. Sarah used to spend $1,200 a year on slug pellets and chemical sprays. Now the ducks sweep through garden beds, snapping up snails and beetles before they can touch her crops. Every egg is a double win, she says, collecting a basket still warm from the nest. I sell breakfast and save my tomatoes in one shot. Why would I ever go back to store-bought poison? The numbers are hard to ignore. Between eggs, meat, and pesticide savings, her ducks turn a backyard chore into a cash-positive, self-sustaining system. For Sarah, the line between farmer and entrepreneur blurs with every quack and every dollar saved. In a world obsessed with scale, her flock proves that the smallest players can rewrite the rules, one egg, one slug, and one backyard at a time. Javier Morales stands over a row of plastic bins, listening to the low, constant rustle of black soldier fly larvae at work. Every week, 200 pounds of kitchen scraps vanish into this living engine, replaced by wriggling protein and bags of rich, earthy fertilizer. Javier doesn't call himself a farmer, he calls himself an inventor. With a few hundred square feet and a couple of hours a month, he's built a system that turns local food waste into cash. No plowing, no feeding schedules, no early mornings. The numbers are hard to ignore. Each bin produces 40 pounds of larvae in just 2 weeks, sold to backyard chicken owners and pet stores at $4 a pound. That's over $20,000 a year, before even counting the frass, the nutrient-packed byproduct gardeners line up to buy at farmers markets for $2 a pound. The whole operation hums quietly behind a privacy fence, nearly invisible to neighbors. I make money while I'm at my day job, Javier says, watching a fresh tray of larvae self-harvest into a bucket. It's the only business I know that pays you to take out the trash and then pays you again for what comes out the other end. In a world obsessed with complicated machinery and endless land, Javier's backyard proves that the highest cash flow can come from the smallest, most overlooked creatures. His secret isn't just automation, it's freedom from the grind, profit that arrives while you sleep, and a new kind of farming that Big Egg never saw coming. Stack the numbers side by side, and the story takes on a new gravity. 5 animals, each dismissed as too small, too odd, or too much trouble, together generate a shockwave that rattles the foundations of industrial agriculture. On less than 1,000 square feet, smaller than the average American front lawn, these so-called hobby animals can bring in up to $87,000 a year, not with debt, not with tractors, but with a patchwork of cages, bins, and hives that fit where a swing set used to stand. Every dollar earned is a direct challenge to the old order. For every quail egg sold, for every rabbit fryer delivered, for every jar of honey and pound of larvae, the myth of scale crumbles. Commodity farms rely on razor-thin margins and government contracts. Backyard producers pocket premium prices, stacking revenue streams that never appear on industry spreadsheets. Inside a 2021 National Chicken Council memo, a single line admits the truth. Niche animal systems threaten market uniformity. The fear isn't about noise or disease, it's about the power of ordinary people armed with forgotten knowledge to out-earn a factory barn from the comfort of home. The numbers don't just add up, they explode the boundaries of what farming can be. For Big Ag, this isn't a side hustle, it's an existential threat hiding in plain sight. Right now, backyard profits threaten the story industrial agriculture depends on, because 5 overlooked animals can out-earn acres of corn or cattle, all in a single suburban lot. Every new backyard operation chips away at that monopoly. The real barrier isn't land or money, it's permission. The future of food could be hiding behind your fence. What would you risk to claim it? Share your vision in the comments below.